I have one of those events, occurrences, manifestations, experiences in my life where I hesitate to speak about it because it puts you on the fringe of the accepted, normal perception of the world. The standard, trained, educated in our systems consciousness and image of what we are is nowhere near my reality and many others. And so this experience, this occurrence moves out into a certain realm. And it's peculiar because we are raised in these education systems, and when I was a child, the church would even come in to class assemblies where many classes would get together. And yet if you were to mention in these educational institutions the idea that there was some sort of higher dimensional force or higher dimensional species, it would be scoffed at. And this is the total insanity of our education system for someone of my generation, that we're being taught science on one hand and religion that says this is real on the other, but if you brought the religion into this, then you would be told that you're a mad person, so why mix them together? And so very on the fringe. And last year I had this with the Beings of Blue Light video, and I went ahead and shared it, and these benevolent manifestations in consciousness, which I deem to be angelic and loving, they helped us and have helped us with the children. I've seen them before, as I mentioned, and last year I gave the example. Out of many examples I could have chose, for some reason I chose that one in the first video, that they prodded me in my liver in meditation and it made me jump in pain in real life. Weeks later, if you've seen both videos, you know my body miraculously, and even the hospital said it's like confusing to them, almost like a medical miracle, that my body expelled a load of gallstones on its own, which I didn't know I had, but after the years of having PICC lines and all these treatments when I was ill, then I can understand how these things might manifest. And so I get prodded in meditation by a being of blue light in this area of the body. 10 weeks later I feel pain then, and my body miraculously expels these stones. And so I had some confidence from that I should share, seems I have a platform. But this puts you on the fringe of the normality of human consciousness. And I've made it no secret on the channel, I've said that I've sometimes witnessed what looked like a species interfering negatively in my eyes in humanity's life, mankind's story, can we call it. And when I'm heavily in the spirit, when I'm very empty and spirit is very present, I have capacity to remove these beings from people. And there's a difference between these beings and between entities. You feel it when you move in this realm, and it's like another sense in your body. You know when it's benevolent. You have discernment, as a Christian would call it. You are able to discern spirit immediately, same as I can discern human beings who are wavering towards the wrong path when I meet them as well. And so I can discern when there's an entity or a disembodied energy, but also it seems to me that there are other dimensional intelligent life forms that we may label aliens. And of course, I wouldn't be the first to say that, because persons have had these profound experiences when they've used things that have brought them into the pineal, like DMT, and they've travelled interdimensionally, and persons all around the world have seen the same things, and it's clearly not a hallucination. That said, I'm not ruling out, and I'm not saying I've had a conversation with aliens, but I am saying that it probably was, because the conversation was about technology, and that's what makes me say this. But I'm also not ruling out that this could be spiritual and of the what we would label demonic, or could be an archetype of human subconsciousness as I explore subconsciousness, the subconscious mind, and the archetypes that arise within there. The problem comes with language. when we say there's an angelic being, people say, oh, it's an angel. But when you say there's a being of light, people freak out and say, oh, maybe that's the negative. But I have discernment. I can tell when it's benevolent or not. And so in meditation, I left my body and I passed into a space whereby I appeared in among a group of this, what I've said is a species that looks to be negatively interfering with humanity's story. And they almost seemed a little surprised that I had arrived there. But I also stated clearly that I was with Source, the highest of high, the Creator. And they said, we know who you are with. And now the difference here was that a conversation began. I have seen these beings and I have taken them off people. I have separated them from people suffering who I know. And those, without telling those persons, they've responded and told me that they feel much better the next day, for example. And so I know they attach. And this time we spoke. And I want to share this because the conversation went to technology. And that's what makes me say this is a potentially an advanced species somewhere in the universe, in another dimension of reality, who are living their lives and doing their thing. And Islam call the jinn. They say there are the jinn who live extremely long lives and they live in amongst us in another dimension. Kind of spiritually relates to this, but I just want to share the conversation. I immediately said, when I realized that we were having an ability to talk, I said, why are you hurting people? It was my first question. And they replied, our intention is not to hurt people. It's not to hurt you. That's not our intention. Our intention is to answer a calling from a higher source. And so I, of course, was confused by this, and I needed to explore that with them. And before I could say anything, they replied and said, how do you know that the God you serve is the original God? How do you know that God is not using you to take your energy, to use you to generate energy? And I said that I can only go off how I feel. And they responded and said, how do you not know that the way you feel, this love and compassion, is a trick from that God and cementing you inside this reality as a servant to it, to this force? And therefore you're being used. And I said, I guess in all totality, a human can't say that one way or the other, but can only walk with the faith that the original source of all, the white light of creation, the origin, has a connection to us and looks out for us. And they responded and said, we have a call to find that truth by using technology to escape this experience of life. And they said, how do you know that our call is not from that original source? And so I asked them why they must hurt people for that. And their response was that it's about energy. It's about needing energy from humans who go into these different states, energetic states, vibrational states. And so I said, but this is unfair, and they should be allowed to live in the love of God. And they responded and said, how many of your species do you really think know this loving God? And my response was, I would hope all. And they responded and said, not all, because clearly we are the God of a great many of them. And I don't know what that meant, but I do know that what I have seen is that they put people into these positions where they grab at the world. Now, of course, that could link up with the spiritual teaching from the Bible of Lucifer and the fallen angels. It could link up to that they want to be God. They want to have all the power. And so I responded and said, so if your pursuit is for the origin, the original source of all creation, the truth of the white light of creation, and you believe you are to use technology to get there, I am under the impression that I too am on that path, and technology has assisted my species, but I do not need technology to reach there, because I can do it organically. And I believe that before our technological advancement, that there were persons, tribal nations, who were doing it organically. And of course the Native Americans had a lot of talk about the Star People, etc. The Kachina, the Hopi. And so they responded and said, among our kind are those who think like you, are those who think as you do, that it can be attained without only using technology, that technology can get you to a point and then it can be attained by self-liberation, if we will, self-surrender to something. But then they responded and said, but as with your species, for all your species doesn't have a stated goal that it's trying to understand God through technological advancement, the predominant and dominant push is towards technology in their species. And I found that fascinating, because it's true, our species doesn't have a stated collective goal that it's trying to know existence and the origin and understanding of it all through technology. But we are heading that way. It's clear we're walking in that direction. And so I asked, and they said they, as a collective, have a stated goal, that this is the point of their existence. The point of their whole society is to use technology to advance towards the full understanding of what existence is, or the escape of existence is a term they used, to return to the truth of the source. But they said there's a split between them using just technology and self-liberation, natural means, if we will. And that our species are doing the same thing. And I had to agree that it looks like we are a little bit, for all we haven't yet, as a species, for all we haven't as yet. Sorry, the guy with a go-kart going past. For all we haven't as yet brought together our species with a common goal, and we haven't as yet brought together our species to use technology towards a common goal, it seems we are walking in that direction. And so I asked them, why then must humans suffer? And they kind of showed that rather than us being in a state of praise and worship and feeding what they perceive may be a trap of good feeling, that when we feel opposed to that, they can use that energy towards their technological advancement of becoming the source, of escaping existence, of understanding the full mystery of God through technological advancement, controlling it, becoming it, I guess is the way to put it. But they said that they give great respect and reverence for the sacrifice humans make, in the same way that tribes and humans would normally give thanks for the sacrifice of beings that they kill to advance life, as in food, animals, etc. And so they said their stated goal of survival and escaping this existence, they didn't have anything negative against humans, but it was just that we were cattle to them in that progression and advancement, but they gave thanks for the sacrifice. And so I said, why do you feel that you have that and we should not have that? And they said, your lineage doesn't allow for it. And I said, this is nonsense. You can't say that you are special and this other species is not. And so they brought me back to the notion that humans eat animals and had to get to where we are. Meaning this is nothing personal. In the same way that humans would say that was nothing personal, we had to survive and this is existence that we are in, this is reality. And so I asked them about this path, and they said that the path I speak of, which some of their species speaks of, retains the natural world which they see as mechanical in a biological sense, whereas their world, because they had to consume this natural world to create their technology to understand it, is all but finished and dead. And so they must find energy from other places, and one such place is seemingly the suffering of humans, or dragging humans away from elevating in their love and joy towards God, because they see that potentially as a false God, and so by dragging us away from that and making us suffer, they use that energy somehow, but I don't get how. But in doing that, in grabbing energy in that way, they had destroyed their world. And so at this point the conversation began to end, because I started to lose connection to what was going on. And I was left by saying, how come I have power over you when I am in spirit? And they responded and said, we know of this, and we know of that power, because you serve this highest power which we are trying to escape through technological advancement. But they still return back to the notion that that which is calling them to escape this power is the true God calling them from beyond this existence. And they said, I can't argue that they are wrong or that I am right. And they said nobody can really know, but who is it that's calling them to do this? Now, of course, this could be the call of Lucifer, the fallen one, telling them they can be like God. At this point, I said, does this in any way make us enemies? And they said no. But clearly our expressions of life cross over, and so we are in opposition to one another, because we wish to continue as we have for millennia, they said. Actually, they said for millennia it's been their way to expand with technology to understand existence. And that doing it a natural way of liberation, some of them believe in it, but their society wasn't ready for that yet, in the same way our society wasn't yet to put its brakes on technological advancement as it destroys the planet. And so I said, I believe upon the love of my God, and therefore I won't let you make persons suffer whenever I see it. and they understood this. And they said, we believe that our God is calling us, and therefore, as you must eat food as a species to have gotten to where you are, in the same way, they feel that we are merely cattle, and they have a higher calling of more importance than our suffering, in the same way that a tribe sees their survival as more important than the life of the animals that they take. And so they said it's no intentional malice towards humans. It's purely our driven goal to escape existence, and you are a means by which we can gain the energy to continue our technological advance towards that. And at this point, it began to fade away. And I was left stunned and startled by this experience, of course. And I came to tell Fritzi what had happened, and it was just mind-blowing. And I know this could be a conversation with an archetype of human subconsciousness. It could be that. By an archetype, I mean a form of the human subconscious trying to explain what humanity is doing to me. I'm aware it could be that. But these visions occurred, and they have occurred inside society for thousands of years with shamans and medicine persons and monks and priests and saints and messiahs. But I had this conversation, and I find it fascinating. However it was, if we look at the spiritual element, a religious, if we will, that whole narrative would fit potentially the story of the fallen angels and Lucifer trying to become God through technology, trying to be God, as Lucifer said it should be, trying to escape existence through that. And their argument being that who's calling them to do that? If the God that I am serving, the one that has love and compassion for all things, and we give worship and praise to, who's calling them outside of that? And so that falls into this notion of the fallen one, the pride of wanting to not surrender to it but to be it. But it just became fascinating to me because I've seen this same, what looks like a species, and they have individual features, etc. And so was it that? Was it spiritual communication with a realm of deceivers? Was it a higher dimensional alien species who is manipulating this realm for things that we can't even begin to understand with our meager human intellect, but can when we come back to our sovereign self, when we come back behind the meager intellect and into the whole being that is aligned with the white light of creation, with God, with Source, with the presence of God. Because in there, I acknowledge and they acknowledge that I have power to take them away from people. And their response was that, yes, that is a great power, but we are aiming to become more powerful than that through technological advancement. But until we do, yes, that is a great power that you have access to. And what I find so fascinating about this, because I don't have answers here, this is an experience I've had, and I'm not a crazy person. These experiences are real, whether it's archetype, whether it's moving to another dimension, whether it's moving to a spiritual plane, a higher dimensional alien species, however we're going to use language to throw a net over the inexplainable. I don't know how to use language correctly for it. But what I can say is that there's a story that the whole world should know that happened in Zimbabwe at Ariel Primary School, where an alien craft landed and like 100 children and teachers met two beings who were short and came out of the craft. And all of the children, who were interviewed by a Harvard psychologist the following week, and who deemed that they were not lying and that it was not mass hysteria, that something had gone on. They all said the same thing, that these beings came with a warning, and the warning was, don't pursue technology, it'll destroy your world. Stay with the world that you have, or you're going to end up destroying it and living in a self-created world like these beings that I met seemingly were. And that happened to 100 children, and those beings benevolently passed a message to say, you're making a mistake as a species for walking that road. These beings I met were still pursuing that, but said that among them were those who believed that my approach would be correct. I have nothing to gain by sharing this and everything to lose. I have this charity and these children and dogs that depend on me. I have my family here. I have things I want to be doing and creating in the world. But I would be a man without integrity and a father to my sons without integrity if I didn't speak my truth. And this is what happened. This is what happened to me. And for those who have had experiences like this, through psychedelics or meditation or fasting, my first ever one was in a 40-day water fast. It was my first time of having these sort of experiences. I believe that was the first one, of shifting consciousness in that way. If it's the archetype of the human subconscious, it's still equally as important an mystic experience for humanity and for the person and the immediate community around them, as if it's a genuine traveling to another dimension. Because the arising of the depth of the topic and topics that come there are of great importance. And so, however you want to put this, if you want to use old speak and say this is Lucifer and his minions and they are trying to be God, so be it. But I knew they had no power over me, and they told me very clearly, because I said, I know I have power over you guys. And they said, yes, you do. But they claimed that they would have that power technologically someday. Now, if you want to say it's a higher dimensional species, and perhaps we've misunderstood what these Bible texts meant. Some fascinating work, a book called The Scars of Eden, or Escape from Eden, if I can't remember which it is, about that. I haven't read it all, I've seen just bits and pieces. Whether it's the archetype, the subconscious mind conjuring imagery to communicate messages from the depths of consciousness, I have no answers on that, but I have this experience. And it made me realize that perhaps the yearning in someone like myself to know the truth and to find union with God is exactly the same yearning that's inside persons who are like trying to do it through technology but haven't openly stated that's their goal. But somehow there's just a different functioning in them. There's just something off, where they feel that they can do it through their own power and intellect, whereas I don't get that feeling. I acknowledge that our intellect is powerful. I acknowledge that technology has allowed me to even commune with God as I have, after living in a developing country. I'm so grateful for the developed world and all the freedom it gives us. But it seems to me that we may go too far with technology, and that it's potentially better that we start coming together finding a unified species goal rather than all these individual goals, wars, systems, politics, but one individual goal of knowing the highest truth of God's love, for example. And then we can make decisions. We can reach this level technologically, and then from there, now we are comfortable. We must stop pursuing that with technology and start pursuing that with our own liberation, our own workings, our own dedication, devotion, alignment, emptying, as I would say it. I don't know. And I don't fear technology. I see the great good it can do in the world. But I do think applying technology to try and escape existence as they were, or try and be God, as many I think humans would like to do as well, is where we need to draw the line. And rather use technology to provide comfort, to make sure survival is met and the loving needs of one another are met. And then from there organically pursue through the machinery and technology, the biological technology that is the human vessel and its anatomy of prayer, which I've spoke about in depth on this channel. I have no idea why these experiences have just started happening in my life. I spend more time in meditation. Perhaps I broke through something different psychologically. But they are happening. And that's, I guess, all I can say about my conversation with seemingly, given the way they were talking, some sort of higher dimensional species, be it alien, be it what we would label demonic. Who knows what these things are? These terms of language, they're very restrictive. But I do know, no matter what, that alignment with the love of God had dominion over them, and they create suffering for our species. And therefore, no matter what they claim their goal is, I believe they've walked off onto the wrong path. And we should stand our ground against that by being in presence as much as possible and being so filled with the light of God that they have no power here. Because dragging us away from that light and joy and thanksgiving is where they get their power to advance their agenda, their want to escape existence. I'll be called a loony for this one again, no doubt, but there we are. This is what happened. God bless, guys. Be well.